Hey, everybody. Welcome to the BRC podcast. I'm your host, Justin Musel, the founder of the Parent Dugout and Justin Musel Baseball. Excited to talk a little bit with Nick today, Penn State Recruiting Coordinator, awesome dude and awesome evaluator. So excited to talk with him a little bit. We'll jump into evaluating players, which I think is good for any player, whether you're a youth, high school. It doesn't matter. When you talk about recruiting, evaluation is kind of the heart of it. And we'll get into that a little bit today. So I'm excited to talk with Nick. And from my end, I'm just excited to talk about from a scouting perspective too, because I have so much experience on this side of it. There's so many nuances to this. Really excited about. So if you're on watching through YouTube, feel free to in the chat to throw us some questions. We'll get to those live. And we'll get to all of the questions that you have. So feel free to throw some questions in there and hop in and join us here as we talk with Nick. And so let's bring him in. Come on in, Nick. Let's talk a little bit about evaluating players. What's up, man?
What's up, Justin? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet, man. Appreciate you taking the time. I know we were talking away for the podcast. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind for you, man. I know how the summer start for you. You want to give us a little backdrop of the whirlwind the last couple of weeks have been
Yeah,
for
I
you?
mean, it's just as anything else every summer, right? Like,
Yeah.
luckily, for the last 10 days or so, I've been in Pennsylvania in the Northeast region. And, luckily during this time, we're able to stay with some family. My father-in-law lives out in the eastern part of PA. So he's got a hunting lodge that we stay at and, doing like the whole circuit down there, Diamond Nation, Pennsylvania State games and back and forth. But I left my house last Tuesday. I just got back last night. So, it's a little bit over a week, and then I'm home for 3 days, and then I won't see State College again until like the middle of July sometime. So
That's
it's
crazy, man.
and there's some downtime in that, there's some dead period, but it's visiting relatives and getting back on the
Yeah.
road and then coming back, and before you know it, the season's here and it's ready to
Yeah.
go. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, man, because it's like there's not really a great downtime for you guys, right? I mean, it kind of just flows from, I mean, a really busy season where it's hectic, a ton of games, you're traveling a lot. It's a whirlwind. Then you go right into the portal season, then into like the recruiting season. It's like the thing with the process now is it doesn't really slow for you guys, man. I mean, do you feel like it gives you energy, Nick, or like do you feel like you get to a point sometimes where you run out?
it depends when you ask me that question and what's going on during that point of year, right? Like,
Exactly, man.
really the downtime is December, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
time where we're off the road. We don't do anything really from a camp standpoint. You've got a couple different dead periods in there and recruiting shutdowns in there. So that's our time to chill a little bit. It's it's kind of how I'm wired though, and
Yeah.
obviously you take that time and you utilize your downtime in the dead periods. And but when that recruiting window closes in the fall, that like second week of October or so, we're off the road. So, and then our season starts to slow down, our fall season. So it's that allows us to be home a little bit on the weekends, and because we're our individual segment during that time. And then, that first month or so of our spring season, we're not able to recruit. So it doesn't start back up again until March. And it's almost like, and we're not, it becomes, you're in it, but it's a touch secondary. It's not like a completely a secondary, um, a piece to your program during that time. For us, we're still, doing some flights during the spring because we might need to see a junior college player, a couple out of region guys, but mostly it's some day trip stuff on a Monday or so. And then the summer hits and it's, as I said, like you blink and it's over, so, and then
Yeah.
it's right back to it. So.
It's kind of wild, man. And I can speak on this on the draft side. It feels like you have to outsiders, it feels like someone might have a ton of time, but it goes so fast every year. And then it comes draft time and you're like, we only have 3 weeks and we have a lot of work to do. And
Yeah.
you kind of go through the same cycle again the following year, right? Where you feel like you have this, this extensive amount of time, but those in it know that it goes really fast and you have to be efficient with your time and all that. So I know that you're busy, man. I appreciate you taking the time and you get to see your mom today too, right? That's a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so they'll drive in. It's my mom, my dad, and my grandfather who's
Oh,
90
nice,
years old
man.
and still kicking. Yeah, so they're
There we
they're
go.
coming up. They're coming up today, and they'll be here at some point later this afternoon. Not quite sure where, but when, but
That's
around
awesome,
that
man.
time sometime. So
That's awesome, man. 90 years old. He's doing well, huh?
he's kicking. Yeah, he's kicking. I
That's
mean, the
great,
dude was
man.
an animal. Up till he was probably about 80. He was painting walls, and it's one of the first things me and my wife, when we were still in Massachusetts, when I was at Northeastern, we bought a fixer upper house, and he came in at freaking 80 years old and grabbed the paintbrush, and my wife's like, he's an animal. I'm like, yeah, where do you think I get it from? Like it doesn't, there's no
So
stopping
great,
him.
man.
He
That's
slowed down a little
that's
bit,
great, man.
quite a
That
lot, but not, I mean, up till 10 years ago, the dude was nonstop.
that is awesome, man. I have a grandpa who is 90. He just turned 90 as well, and he's a farmer cowboy. That's like where that's and he's still out baling hay, man. Like, it's
Oh,
wild.
wow.
Those
It
guys
keeps
are
me,
just built and that generation, Nick, they're so much tougher than we are, man. I
no, no
admire that
doubt.
generation, man.
No
They just
doubt.
keep going. They're tough. They know what they're doing, but appreciate it, man. I know you got family coming in, so I wanna respect your time here, but
Sure.
such a great conversation we're gonna be going into. But before we get into that, I know about your background. We've known each other for a long time, but you've had a lot of success at the places you've been, but you're also still young for, the industry in general for what you've been able to accomplish and the programs that you've been at. So, can you just take the viewers and the listeners through your background and how you ended up at Penn State?
Yeah, so I played at the Division III and junior college level, and I pretty much stayed in the Northeast my entire career. Um, I was my first job out of college was at Southeastern Iowa Community College, which is kind of a hidden gem. It was my only time really outside of New England until Penn State. Justin Schulte's the head coach there, and I
Yeah,
say this: I was really lucky in my career for the guys that I've worked for. Like I've worked for potentially, three Hall of Fame coaches in my career, and you just get to learn so much from those guys and learn what winning looks like. And not
yeah,
just what winning looks like, but what it takes to achieve, to win at whatever level it is of college baseball. And yeah, I've been at the junior college level, I've been at the Division III level, I've been at the Division I level. The winning all looks the same, right?
yeah.
And when I was out in Southeastern Iowa, and Justin Schulte's won, I think close to 1,500 games in his time there. He's been to the JUCO World Series a couple times. I just learned so much, and there's still some things that I take from him from an offensive standpoint that I learned out there that we teach our guys here at Penn State, because again, it equates to winning, right?
Yeah.
So I was there for 1 year, and then I was able to. I got back to Massachusetts, and I took a job at Wheaton College. I was a volunteer at Wheaton College in Massachusetts. I got to work for Eric Podbelski, again, another legend. He's
Mhm.
now the associate head coach at Brown. He just left last year. Frank Holbrook's the head coach at Brown
Yeah,
now. Frank
yeah,
played for us at Wheaton, and Frank's one of my closest friends in the business. And so Pud went over with him to Brown, and talk about a machine, like a machine. It
yeah,
is, his attention to detail is like something that I've ever seen. Is nothing. I've never seen anything like it. It is incredible. Just day in, day out, what he does, whether it was from a recruiting standpoint, um, preparation with practice, scouting, incredible. And obviously, he made multiple trips to the College World Series. When we were there, we lost in the national title game. So I so lucky. And then kind of hopping on with him, then I was a head coach at the Division III level for 5 years at Nichols College. And you know, I again, I wasn't even close to being ready to be a head coach at that age. I was 20. I think I was 25, maybe 26 years old when I got that job. But one of the greatest things about it was I learned how to work. And what I took from Justin Schulte and Eric Podbelski and applied that was just, I made a billion mistakes. I learned what worked, what didn't. I learned to chill a little bit too, which some people might say that that's hard to believe, but I definitely was able to kind of learn, like, the things that you need to worry about and the things you don't need to worry about, and really just focusing on the things that you can control. And it was just great for me to be able to build a program from the ground up there, because it was, probably one of the worst programs in Division III baseball at the time. And we did some pretty cool things there. But I was there for 5 years, and then I was hired at Northeastern with Mike Glavin. And Mike Glavin and Kevin Cobb, they've been together now there for, probably close to 15 years, and
Yeah.
just two unbelievable guys. And, Glav does such an unbelievable job getting guys to play the style of baseball that every single year you can look at that team and it has that same identity.
Yeah.
Incredible motivator. He's really just an unbelievable guy to work for, and getting guys to play the way we wanted them to play at Northeastern. And obviously, we had a lot of success there,
Yeah.
over that 5 year period. And then I was able to end up at Penn State. And me and Coach Gambino have known each other for years. When I was at Wheaton, I would have worked at the BC baseball camps. So we started developing a relationship, and as I got the Nichols job, I was still working their camps, and then I got the Northeastern job, and then we started to become competitors, and running into each other a lot on the same guys from a recruiting standpoint, and obviously having some great battles on the field during those 5 years. And then he called me about this job, when he accepted it 3 years ago. And honestly, it's where we are now. So
Yeah, man, that's a great journey, man. And you bring up a lot of great coaches there in that conversation too. And I think, it's really cool, man, to be able to learn from the guys that you have. And I mean, all the way now to Bino Glav, I have the utmost respect for. I mean, even going back to Schulte, man. I mean, Justin is one of the best coaches in the country that a lot of people don't know about,
incredible.
right? Because he's a junior college coach. So,
Yep.
but does a great job. He's comfortable in his own skin. He knows what he's building. So, it's cool, man. You have a lot of guys. I guess the one thing that I take away as you kind of talk about all that is I see a lot of guys that understand their recruiting identity, right? It seems like all the guys that you worked for all had a recruiting identity that they really understood, and that's really cool, man. To work for guys like that just kind of get what works for them,
Sure.
how they know how to win, and now you're building that for yourself, right? So, and have had a lot of success. But yeah, it just so many great things there, man. And I want to shift now to the conversation and get into the evaluating players, right? So this is obviously a topic we could talk about for hours and hours. So there's a lot of different pieces to it. So what I want to do is just kind of break down the simple things so people understand it. And so I want to start with this, man. So let's just start with the simple things of when you talk about evaluating, what are some of the tools for you, Nick, or Penn State? You don't have to speak broadly here. I'll maybe come back on and speak more broadly. But for you guys, what are the tools of the 5 tools that really stand out to you that you're really drawn to?
Well, I think one of the biggest things, and it depends positionally what we're talking
Yep.
about, right? You can break down on the mound,
Yep.
and from a positional standpoint, athleticism's usually the number one thing that I like to check off, right? Like, we want guys who are really athletic, and for multiple reasons, right? And we're still considered a northern school, and whether we're a northeast school or mid Atlantic school, I think we still stay in our footprint, which is northern players. And I think that tends to be for the most part. And there's always some guys that you take from out of region, but you want northern players. And northern players have really good upside, right? A lot of them are 2 to 3 sport athletes. A lot of them have not been just playing baseball and focused on it, and listen, there's positives and negatives with that. I think that sometimes, your southern or west coast players tend to handle a bat a little bit better early in their career, just because they have a little bit more feel for it, so, like, northern guys, I think it takes some time to learn the adjustability, and it takes them some time to understand that You have to be able to hit when you're not always on perfect time, and I think that that's just something that, being a Northern coach for my entire career, that we got to make sure we're working on that almost daily and making that a big part of what we are as a program. So the athleticism piece is big. That usually tells me a guy can make adjustments, right? That usually tells me that he's got really good upside. And I say it all the time, like, bat to ball and the hit tool is the hardest thing to evaluate in every single sport.
Yep.
You don't know if a guy's going to hit or not. And you might have an idea and say, hey, I think this guy's going to really hit. And, it's not black and white.
Mhm.
So when you take guys who you're recruiting, and it's, hey, this guy can really hit, but he's not really a great athlete. He can play one or two positions. It gets dicey, right? Because you want to be able, from our standpoint, like, I believe in having a dynamic, multi-dimensional offense. That's how we teach it. That's how we go about it. That's how we want it to look on game days. Well, you have to have athletes to do that, because you want to be able to score different ways. Okay, you want to be able to steal bases, put pressure on teams. When the wind's howling in, can you execute bunts? And, like, athletes are able to make those adjustments, and their ceilings are way higher, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
floor might be lower, but the ceiling's way higher. And so that's something from my standpoint. We want really good athletes who check off a lot of those boxes. On
I
the
like that one.
mound, and then on the mound, it's, for us, it's, I look at guys, and it's the projection, the upside, and again the athleticism and how they move. Right? How does the arm work? How does the body move? And even though sometimes those guys are 86, 88, that's a guy who we feel really confident about, that's going to be a 93, 94 mile an hour arm. And it goes the other way too. Sometimes you have that 89 to 92 mile an hour guy that is going to be able to make even more of a jump. But then you have some of the boxier guys, and sometimes, and it's not, again, it's not always black and white, and this isn't always the right evaluation, but sometimes a boxier guy who, might struggle to spin the baseball but throws really hard, the upside's probably not great, and might be a lack of athleticism. So it's just all things that you talk about. And again, it's not one size fits all. There will be guys still that we
Yeah.
say, hey, I think this guy's got a really good chance to hit, even though it's an average athlete, but maybe this is a guy that we need for the class, might be left-handed or something along those lines, right? Same thing on the mound, right? Like, hey, I don't see too much upside, but he is 90 to 92. He's big, he's strong, but that fastball is really good. If we can get him to be able to execute the breaking ball in zone, even if it's a below average pitch, it might be enough to keep that hitter honest and have to honor the pitch. So it's just, nothing's black and white. That's kind of the baseline, and then you can move off of it depending on whatever that tool really is, right?
Yeah, great stuff, Nick. There's so many pieces into that. I think, but I will say, as a in general too, even away from you guys, I mean, athleticism, always working to be a better athlete, wherever you are on that spectrum, whether you're an elite athlete or an average athlete. You and I both know this now. When you're 14, 15 years old, you can train your body so much better now and understand it to become a better athlete than what you are, wherever that is. And so that's a big piece of it. I think athleticism, I hear that over and over and over. So whether you're a position guy or a pitcher, athleticism sort of wins out now. I mean, and you can watch the College World Series and you watch the different bodies and you watch the movers and the athletes that you're seeing. It's, you see the anomalies, but the majority you see are athletes, right? So I appreciate you covering that. So I want to kind of get into this one though on you. Let's just start when you walk into a park, because I think a lot of people have this question and they're always wanting to know this with coaches. But when you walk into a park to see a player, let's use a position player and a pitcher. So we'll separate these out. But let's start with a position player. But when you walk in to see a guy, what are you hoping for, Nick, that when you go and see him, you're just like, I hope I get to see this today because that gets me excited. What are some of those things?
Oh, I think the first thing is that first impression is really important, and it's just how you play the game. Are you an animal on the field? Like, how do you go about your business on the field? And it's something that I look for with all these guys, and not everybody has it, and it's not something that you cross somebody off the list for necessarily. But are they a guy that are They fly around the field. Okay. They're in every pitch, right? Pre-pitch, post-pitch. Are they vocal on the field? Do they take control? After an error or a diving play, and they get back up and get on to the next play, right? And I think those things carry into the batter's box too. Like, what's that dude look like when he's running the bases? Right? I had a kid the other day took an awesome hustle double on a ball I thought he had no shot at. Man, if you have a run tool, you better be showing off that every opportunity you have, even if it's a pop up to the pitcher, right? Like, get on second
Yeah.
base.
Yeah.
And again, as I said, it's not the end all be all, but that first impression is really big for me. Those are the things that I like to see, and that goes outside of the evaluation of what does he do in the box, what does he get to defensively. That's the thing where if he doesn't check off all the boxes, and again, it goes back to there's always a floor, right? There's always a floor with the talent that you're trying to get in your program. But if he has the athleticism, if he plays the game the right way, and even though some of those things might not be as crisp, that might be a guy that you want to bet on because you just feel like, hey, he plays the game the right way. You make your phone calls, you find out he's a freaking animal worker, and he's the kid that's got the key to the indoor facility because he hits before school or he gets back in there after school. That to me is one of the biggest pieces. That's the separator.
Yeah.
That's the separator in all of these guys. I always say it all the time. We're recruiting really talented baseball players and trying to get them to play the game really hard. And I
Yeah.
think when you do that, and it carries into the mindset too, in the mental game. When you get guys to understand how hard they can play and how that can intimidate other teams and give you an edge in every game that you're in,
Yeah.
it's huge. It's huge for your development. It's huge for your confidence. It's that identity piece, and you need to recruit that to a certain extent, right? Because if you have 25 of the guys who you're like, oh well, we're gonna just teach it this way, it doesn't necessarily work out that way, right? Like,
Yep.
you have to have those guys in the program, so then maybe those 4 or 5 guys you do take that might not quite have that edge of the way they play the game, they can pull them with them and get them to play the game, and they can see how those other guys play the game every single day, how they go, because it carries into their work off the field as well.
Yep. It does, man. And I think you hit on it from your end of the recruiting identity and what you're looking for. I would also say this: when you look at the 5 tools, so you have the run tool, hit, power, defend, and arm tool. So those are your 5 tools for everybody listening. And when you look at the 5 tools, I think what's really important to understand is evaluators can figure out the tools that you have. And of course, you're trying to develop your tools. I mean, that's a big part of this process. But I would say this: I also think it's important for players to understand their identity as well. So you just kind of hit on it. Like if you have an elite run tool, that you wanna, like, really play into that as a player. Like you talked about, a fly ball, the pitcher, that's a high fly ball. You stand on second base at the end of that when he catches it, guys are like, "Whoa, that guy can really run. He's out of the box quick. Look at how he gets down the line. Look at how he's moving." You're showing that off the whole time. So I think as a player, you wanna understand if you're not a power guy, like, if you don't have the power tool yet, maybe it's coming down the road. Understand your ability and play within that realm though, because nobody's impressed with fly balls to the right fielder or something, right? Like that's not gonna get you there. So you kind of have to understand your identity as a player too, of what tools that you bring to the table to help your team win. And the coaches just want to see whatever those tools are, how can you help your team win? Because when you come to the school, those same tools are going to help you win, right? So I think it's important to kind of for players listening to understand that, coaches at the youth and high school level to understand that you're just really trying to pull out the tools that every player has, while obviously developing the other tools that maybe are a little bit behind the other tools. But what are your thoughts on that as the player understanding what they do really well versus what they don't do well, Nick?
I think that's a great point and great conversation. That's something that we talk about as soon as the guys get here too on campus. You know, if you are doing it right, like, you don't want to have all the same guys, and it kind of goes back to what I talked about earlier. You don't want to have the same of every guy. in your lineup, right? And
Yeah. Yep.
we put guys in really four buckets, and you've got your animal who literally can do everything. Like that's your draft pick, right? He hits for average, hits for power, can really run, plays defense, like does it all, right? That's your animal, right? You've got your gorillas who are your slug guys, and I always say it, like we don't want guys to punch out a lot, but you can punch out a lot if you're walking a lot. So like your slug
Yeah.
on base guy, that's your gorilla, right? And then you got your speedsters. That's pretty self-explanatory. Your job's to get on base, create havoc, make that pitcher have to separate two different jobs so that gorilla at the plate or that animal is going to get a better pitch because he's so worried about holding you because you're going to take second base or
Yeah.
take third, right? Then
Yeah.
you get your grinders, who are guys who kind of do a little bit of everything. They're your glue. They keep your line moving. And again, like you need those four guys in your lineup. You need those four guys in your program, right? From an identity standpoint. But those are conversations. When we're talking about guys through the recruiting process, and where we are and who we're recruiting. And we say, hey, do we have too much of this guy? Do we have too many speedsters right now? We got to add some of these gorillas, and some of those conversations do transpire. I think that you're always trying to recruit like that animal, but you don't know that kid's an animal until he starts to develop and get better, because a lot of times those guys become animals because of the way they work. They
Yep.
develop right
Yep.
in your system. They develop in your environment. Those guys become that, right?
Yep.
But it's getting guys to understand that and understand who they are, what they can do in our lineup, what they can do in our program, and just really understanding their identity and buying into it. It's not necessarily an easy thing because, if you're recruiting the right guys, everybody's going to want to be an animal, right? But it's getting guys to understand, like, hey, this is what you can do for us and make you be the best possible player and version of yourself. And some guys understand that when they get in here. But other than that, it's a lot of conversations that we have with them, throughout the fall. The way they work on things could be a little bit different as well from a development standpoint, whether it's a base running, an offensive side, in the batter's box. But just getting guys to understand and see that, you're constantly battling it, constantly working on it, because
Yep.
it's guys can think the same way as when they are 16 and 23. They're always trying to get better, and you can't fault them for that, right? But just getting them to understand who they are and,
Yeah.
and what makes them be the best possible version of themselves.
Yeah, man, and that you hit on so many things there that I love. I do think it's really important as a player just to understand what you're trying to accomplish and what you're good at, and I think it's just being comfortable in your uniform, right? Being comfortable with what you can do really well, be unique to you and let your identity flourish. So I appreciate that conversation. I want to get to a question from one of our members. Let's go to the Mark question. Really, really good question. So it's a little lengthy. So hang with me on this one, Nick. So for a 2028 middle infielder with strong contact skills, baseball instincts, and defensive ability, but who is still developing physically, what objective benchmarks do you typically want to see by junior year for him to be viewed as a legitimate Division I prospect? Did you catch all that?
Yeah, I
Let me
did.
start. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
It's a loaded question, right? I mean, it's tough to
yeah,
answer that. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, you can say this, right? Again, as I said, there's always a floor, from where that player is, and plenty of guys, if it's a projection thing, right? Maybe plenty of guys I see one summer they're 5'10", the next summer, when they're going into they're a rising senior, they're 6'1". They had a growth spurt, and then those intangibles really, like, they take over because now he's gotten stronger. That's probably one of the biggest things, the strength thing, because even guys that are 5'10", like 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", you have to be strong,
yep, yep,
right? And there's a projection
yep,
component too,
yep,
but you have to be strong. And if the strength isn't there, especially with the way the game is trending in college baseball these days, if the strength's not there, it's hard to say, like, hey, that in again, Division One baseball there's a lot of teams in Division One baseball, right? But if in order for us to take a guy in again who has the intangibles, who again might be on somewhat undersized, there still needs to be a strength piece. And we need to see that. And is a 28, they might not be strong enough. It might not be a guy we move on. But if we liked all those things, we'll come back next
Yeah.
summer and see
Yeah.
that guy again. Or he's a guy that, you always check in on, like, hey, we liked him, wasn't strong enough. Let's get him up here for camp in November. Gets up here to camp. Hey, he put some really good weight on. He looks good. He's hitting balls harder. All right, let's make sure we get out and see this kid early in the spring. You get out, you see him in the spring. Maybe you decide to move on him or not. And then you have the summer as well. So, there's always that piece. I mean, it too, right? Like there's 27s who last year at this time I didn't know about that
Yep.
I really like right now, and I'm
Yep.
going to follow, those guys around in the summer. And
Yep.
that's a big piece of it. Like getting in the weight room, continuing to sharpen your skills on the field every day, like that's important. But the weight room and the nutrition piece and doing what you got to, like, one of the biggest things for me is when guys say they can't gain weight. You can gain weight. You got to do it the right way, and you got to know what you need to do and how many calories you need to consume, so it's going with how many calories you're burning every single day. Like you can do it if you're married to it, and that's a big part. And I don't know if that answers the question, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of times, like, kind of that player that's being described is just, they got to get stronger. Because
Yep.
if they're 5'8" and they do all those things well, awesome. But they got to be strong enough to be able to still hit balls hard and
Bingo.
throw 90
Yep.
miles an hour across the infield, right? If
Yep.
they're 6'2", they got to fill that frame in still. Maybe the twitch isn't quite there. Maybe it's a baby deer type guy. Well, we're going to go back and see him a year later and see if he added some coordination. And those are all things that we talk about, right?
Yep. I like it, man. I like it. I'm going to go right to the next one. So another member question. So for 2028 players and families, at what point do they realistically move onto your radar in a meaningful way versus simply being identified and tracked? Now I want to pause for a second. I'll let you think on that. This has changed dramatically in the last 5 years with how quickly schools are working. I am often talking to schools daily who are just collecting 2028 names and really just starting even and getting going on 2027s and finishing off 2027s right now. So this has dramatically changed from 6 years ago when I had 8th graders, committing. So the change has been really significant, man. So can you just talk about, for you guys though, what going to this question from the parent dugout member, what does that look like for you for 2028 players?
So we're still a program, and yes, we use junior college, and yes, we use transfer portal. You have to, right? But we're still a program, and again, we're going into year 4 now. So the 25s was our first high school class, right? So that first high school class just finished with us, and we had 2 freshmen playing for us every day, and we had 3 of them pitching for us in big roles. One as a starter, 2 out of the bullpen. Our 26 class, again, we've got 10 guys in that class, and we're fighting the draft with a couple of them. And then our 27 class will be about the same. We're doing it with high school players, right? We're not one of the schools that are living in the portal or just living with JUCO. And I'm just saying that because we operate probably a little bit differently than some of the other programs that do live in those spaces. And it's fine. It's just we think Penn State is the place where you're going to win and get your best player by evaluating them, recruiting them out of high school, and then developing them when they get here. That's how we feel like we're getting the best possible player that we can get, and then supplement 1 or 2 JUCO guys a year, and then 1 or 2 portal guys a year. Like that's kind of what our model is going to look like here. As I said, we just have 1 recruiting class here now. Our second one's going to be here in the fall. But our calendar works a little bit differently, because we're working heavy on the 28s, not anywhere near as early as we used to, but the last 2 weeks I've been watching a bunch of 28s and then sprinkle in a 27 here or there because we're still looking to maybe add a position player or an arm, and we kind of sprinkle that in right now, but that's mainly been my priority, and we're finishing up with the portal here. We don't have a billion portal names that we're going to go see.
Mhm.
But that's, we're kind of now starting to get some names to emerge and what I call get onto our hot board, which are guys who like, okay, we got 25 to 30 names in our footprint of guys that we're like, hey, August 1, this could even be an offer guy. And there's only a handful of those guys, maybe 4 or 5. And then there's a bunch of other guys that, hey, we got to see these guys play a little bit more, but we're close to really liking these dudes.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So our cycle, we really do a good job, in my opinion, starting to see some of those guys in the spring too, some of those 28s, right? So we'll see some of those pitchers pitch during the high school season, and that will go carry through into the summer now. Like we were out at Diamond Nation this week. We cover our state games for PBR heavily. The PBR guys do a great job out here covering the state, and then we'll be in Atlanta for 3 of the next 4 weeks. So, and again, we're watching guys in our footprint. Um, so I think that answers the question as
Yeah, it
far as
does,
like
man. Yeah.
we're in it, but it doesn't end either August 1.
Right.
I
Right.
tell the story. We have a kid right now committed in the 26 class. Um, Kid's name's Hunter Brown, and he's a Jersey kid. And I think that our staff takes a ton of pride in knowing everybody in our footprint. And I was at the Garden State games, and there's a 6'5" righty that steps on the mound. It's 92 to 93, good spin to the slider. He's 6'5", and it's like I don't know who this kid is. And I was blown away by it. A week later, I saw him go and start at a game at Diamond Nation, and within 8 hours, the kid was committed to us. And well, now he's blown up, and he's probably one of the top right-handers on the East Coast. And
Yeah.
that was a kid who we didn't know about until his rising senior year still. So
Yeah.
those things are still happening. You know,
Yep.
it, it-
Yep.
it's we're still looking for that because we're still trying to finish our class. You know, going into this time of year. So right now, yeah, we're looking for maybe a 27 infielder, maybe a 27 arm, just to kind of put the class to bed. So everyone's timeline's a little bit different, but ours we're way more in tune with our high school classes, and we start them a little bit earlier and identifying them a little bit earlier, just because of how we build our roster.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense, man. I really appreciate the thoroughness there too, because I think it's good for people to understand there are different strategies at each school too, but I just think that schools have a little bit more time now. They're not as rushed, right? There's a lot of good players on the board. There's a lot of good players that progress a little bit later, pop a little bit later. So the reason I kind of talk about that is because I do think it's important for people to remember that development is what gets you there, right? So you have to continue to develop. And so if you're rush to be in the process, if you're not ready, you don't need to worry. Maybe you have 12 to 15 months to just get better, develop. You talked about it, get stronger. I think it's just a different process now to where I could see where it used to be where a freshman or sophomore is getting a little antsy. I just think opportunity still is in front of you as a player as you go throughout high school now. It's a little bit better than what it used to be, I guess.
Well,
From a
you talk a little bit about the scouting side. It's way more like preparing for the draft right now, where we're
yes,
like
great
we have our
example. Yep.
boards. Me and a couple of our assistants who have been on the road here are going to get together a little bit later on and just kind of, all right, we've been gone for 8 days. Let's talk about who we've seen again. Now we're getting a ton of crossover, and then every week we just talk about our board and move guys
Yeah.
around. And
Yep.
it's way more okay now on August 1st. Who are we calling? Who are we
Yep.
offering? Like all of those things. It's way more like you described earlier from a draft standpoint. Hey, we have 3 weeks to make our decisions on these guys, and your first decision isn't always your final decision. But you start to understand that and put that together. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No,
It's
man,
just
it's
I
awesome.
thought that
Yeah.
made some sense.
Yeah, it does, Nick. I appreciate the comparison there because it's really true. And you know this, there are late risers in the draft. That'd be a good example of there are sometimes players in the recruiting process that are late risers. If you rise at some point, if you just keep getting better and better, if you get good enough, at some point there's an opportunity for you somewhere probably. that's what I tell guys is like, just keep getting better. If you're not there, if you're not getting the opportunities that you want or the offers you want, just keep getting better. So appreciate that insight. I'm going to keep firing through some of these memory questions, man. We got some really
You
good
good?
questions here. So, all right, let's go to the next one here. So what role should parents play in their child's recruiting journey, and where can they unintentionally hurt the process? Coming at you
Yeah.
strong here, man.
I honestly, I think parents being involved, I do think is important to a certain extent, right? Like these are 15, 16-year-old kids still making decisions, right? Even when they get here, they're 18 and 19, they're still kids, right? I think guiding them through the decision is something that is important and valuable, right?
Yeah,
As I always say, I think that being behind the scenes and being involved in this decision is important. And you can always say like, "Hey, it's his decision, it's the player's decision," but again, they're eight, call it 16 to 21, like they're still kids, they don't fully understand it, right? And helping and guiding from behind the scenes is very, I think, of course that you should be involved, right? It's when you're on the forefront and leading it, that's where it kind of becomes the issue, right?
yeah,
You shouldn't be leading your kids recruitment, right? It should be you're in the background. You're helping them make this decision, you're guiding them in the right direction, right? Those are the things that I think are you're trying to help them and educate them to make that decision, which I think they need to be a part of, right?
yeah.
It's not leading it, right? And I
I
think
like
that
that a
there's
lot,
two
man.
very different things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's just a simple way to say it. I mean, it's be involved, be supportive, listen, ask good questions. All that's very appropriate. But I love how you separate that out. There is a difference between who's driving the car, right? So let them drive the car, and let them take that charge. So I appreciate that insight. Let's go to the next question. I'm going to try to get to everybody's here, and then I'll go back to the topic here, and we'll finish off with some kitchen sink, man. I'll throw some fun questions at you here. So, with so many showcases, camps, and travel teams available, how should families decide where to invest their time and money? What's your opinion on that? Another good question.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is, you know, is I think every college coach says, and one of the biggest things, I actually did it today. So when I got through, I went through all of our 28s that we're on right now, and looking through some of the 27s that we still have. I went back to our camp lists from November and August of last year, just to make sure, like, hey, let me see which one of these guys came to camp again. Because I knew there were a handful, and you go through it and I say, hey, well, 5 of these guys came through camp. Like, there's already real interest there. I like this kid. He was at camp. Now, like, that's a mutual interest. So I'm gonna lock in on those guys over the course of the next couple of weeks here, and because they're high on our board to begin with, but now that I know that there's a mutual interest, and again, like the camp piece is important because like we use camp to learn the kid a little bit too. Like, did we like being around them? Did we like coaching them? What did that whole thing look like? And I think that you can learn a lot from a kid by them coming to prospect camp, by having
Mhm.
conversation with them. And um, again, just that piece, showing that interest. Now, we're gonna go back and see a guy play a bunch more. Like that would be something that I bring up with our staff here today. Like, hey, just let's remember this kid came to camp and he's on our list, so let's make sure we get it right because we like him right now, and this could be a kid who's already really interested in us. Okay, so that's the first piece. I do think the college camps are obviously super beneficial. I think every stop that I've had along the way here, um, our camp has been used, and we've always added players from our prospect camps, right? Um, as far as like travel teams and exposure, I think that there's value to that, right? Being in a good organization. One of the biggest things that I talk about is, we want to make sure that we have somewhat of an inside contact with whoever we're recruiting. Okay. A lot of that stems from building relationships with a lot of these coaches, and I, there are guys that I talk to regularly that I've built relationships with, whether it's New England, Pennsylvania. That relationship piece with the travel coach is really important. So I think that that's something that getting hooked up with the right program and sticking with that program is something that I think is important. A lot of these guys do really good jobs with their organizations, and getting into the right one, and not necessarily chasing anything, but being with somebody
Yeah.
who you're getting better, you're developing. Maybe there is some off season component to it. I think that that's pretty important as well.
Mm.
Being around people that know you and have that relationship, that is so important, right? Like for us, me being able to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, what do you have on this kid?" Because I'm not looking for, does he hit spin? Can he hit velocity? I'm looking for, hey, what type of worker is this kid in the off
Yeah.
season, right?
Yeah.
Those are the things that I want to know.
Yeah.
So being in those types of organizations is something that's really important. Not hopping around, looking for, a cool new name, or what have you done for me lately? Like I think some of that loyalty piece is really important as well.
Interesting, man. Good insight there, buddy. I appreciate that. So, all right, let's try to filter through these really quick here, and then we'll get back. So let's go to the next question here. Awesome insight, Nick. A lot of great questions here from the members. So, real quick here, what's one change you want to see at the Division 1 level for college baseball? If you were in charge, what would be something you would want to change? Can
Well,
you only pick one?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is just kind of, and I think it's going to get there. I think the 5 for 5 and the one-time transfer coming back is something that is going to be really beneficial for everybody, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, it's to me, you can't blame either side, whether it's the coaching staffs, the players. Like we just need to get this to be more of a program, and not an open free agency year after year after year, right? I think that some of the 5 for 5, and I think that the 1 year transfer is going to be something that really helps this, and just kind of it brings some type of order back to college baseball. Like college baseball is awesome right now, right? I think that anybody who is a baseball fan, you could have put on a game during the regionals, the super
Yeah.
regionals, the college world
Yeah.
series now, and be like, man, the game is in an unbelievable spot. Players are so talented right now. Teams are so talented right now. The games are competitive. There's investments being made across the board at every institution. It's great.
Mhm.
So for us, it's, hey, we want to build a program, and I think that the retention piece is something that I think everybody wants to be a part of, right? I
Yep.
mean, coaches want to be able to retain players, parents want to be able to retain players, and keep them in schools and finish their degrees. Like that's a big part in this whole thing too. You got guys making transferring out of schools, and their credits transferring out and being a complete mess. Like that's something that's not talked about at all.
Yeah.
Like
I agree
you
with
go and
that,
you
man.
transfer as a junior and into your senior year, and you could lose 21 credits, right? Like you're now a year and a half delayed from graduating, and then
Yeah.
you sign, you go play pro ball for a while, and or a short while, and
Yeah.
now it's, all right, do I want to go finish these 21 credits? Like
Yeah.
those are some of the things that I think are being lost in this right now, as the portal has just been crazy,
Yeah.
so I'd like to see that tightened up a little bit, and I do believe that it's going to be.
Yeah, awesome stuff, man. I'm with you on all that stuff, Nick. I think we need to rein in kind of where it's at. I don't think anyone really thinks it's a healthy place to be where it's year to year transactional. So we just have a couple more and then I'll get back to it. So question to coach, how does Penn State become the premier program in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area? And how can you counter the warm weather schools coming into the turf? Good question.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that we talk about is being really good in our backyard and our footprint, right? There are really good players in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, right? They're two states that develop prospects at some of the highest levels, right? And obviously Penn State is a name brand. It's really a name brand within our region, right? So that's something that we take a lot of pride in here is again trying to keep the best players in the state of Pennsylvania in Pennsylvania, and including New Jersey in that as well. That's one thing is we talk about, like, even like the evaluation and recruiting standpoint. We get to know our guys and know the guys that we're recruiting, because it's not this spray recruiting concept of like, hey, let me go try to go see this kid in Texas. Let me go try to see this kid in California from a high school standpoint. We're just not doing that. It goes back to one of the model that we had at Northeastern when I was there. We took a ton of pride in owning our backyard, and we're doing the same here. And I think that that's something we can get this program to the highest levels of college baseball with players in our region, and we sprinkle in, an Illinois, a Wisconsin, I consider New York, New Jersey, Maryland our backyard, and
Yep.
those are places where I think that can be really fertile grounds from a talent standpoint. We just got to keep doing our best keeping those guys in their backyard.
Yeah, I like that a lot, man. I would actually argue Penn State's is a significant national brand, right? I mean,
No doubt.
you guys do have pull in other regions as well, but I get what you're saying. And what's interesting about it is you've won in the Northeast, and so has Bino. Like, it's not, you guys have already won in the Northeast at different programs. So and obviously you guys have done a good job there. So I think that's a really good question. I want to get to the kitchen sink because I want to be careful of your time. I appreciate all the member questions. So I'm going to finish up here and then we'll get to the kitchen sink. So when we talk about evaluating players, though, kind of wrapping that part of the conversation up, what is your general advice to players on what they can do as they approach this summer and the fall, and how they can stand out to college coaches when they're at tournaments, when they're at camps, when they're at showcases? What would be your general advice to some of the players and parents listening and coaches that might want to know what you guys are looking for?
Well, I think the biggest thing is going out and playing the game, right? And to me, that's it. Yeah, I think you learn a lot about some of these guys, you know, whether it's, and I don't want to say like everyone's on their A game, whether you're at Futures, everyone's on their A game when they're in Atlanta, at whether you're at East Cobb at the complex, or whether it's you're at Lake Point, like everyone's on their A game. But what do you like when you're at the smaller tournament back home, where there's no coaches there, and there might be a coach there, but you don't know? What do you like there? How are you playing there? How are you going about your business there? When you're off site at one of those big tournaments in Georgia, what's your motor like there?
Yeah.
I think that's something that, when I'm out seeing guys play and watching guys play off site a little bit, that's when you really learn. Like, again, the tools are the tools. Like, we see the arm strength, we see the athleticism, we see the bat speed, but like, what is that like? How are they going about it when they might not necessarily think that there's somebody there? And I think that that's something, just showing up every single day with that same passion. For me, I always put it this way: like, I'm very enthusiastic about baseball. I love everything about it. I love everything about college baseball. Whether it's from the recruiting standpoint or coaching from an offensive standpoint. I'm passionate. I love it. Well, we got to recruit players who are the same way. We
Yeah.
got to recruit guys who love doing it every day, or it's just not going to work,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you're not,
Good
if
point,
you're not
man.
making
Yeah.
if you're not making a baseball decision when you choose Penn State, it's not going to work. So, like, it needs to be a baseball decision. Well, I need to find out if it's a baseball decision by watching you play when you might not think the lights are on that day. But that to me is, how do you go about your business every single day on the field, before the game starts, like, are you a ball player? Like, are you in it? Do you have that energy every single day? And
Yeah.
I need to
So
know
good,
that.
man. So good, Nick. Thanks a lot, man. That was great insight. I appreciate it. I think your insight to anyone listening and watching is just phenomenal. So many good pieces to pull out of this. We're gonna wrap up with the kitchen sink and then the MVP. So I'm gonna throw these questions at you. They're meant to be quick thought. So I'm gonna go through them. They're random. So what's the most ridiculous, funniest story you have from a recruiting visit?
Man,
No
I
name.
mean,
You don't have to bring up names, but what do you
on
got? What do you got for me?
the spot, I don't know. I mean, there's been so many of, you know, we had a kid last year who was at a camp, and he took off halfway through it, and I just think he got some different vibes from us, and that we never heard from him again. So we need to find somebody else to play his position the second half of camp. So
That's funny, man. That's pretty good. All right, let's go to the next one, man. All right, what's a skill you have away from baseball that most people don't know about? What is something you're really good at that most people would not know?
I mean, I'm a, I have no hobbies. Like, it is just baseball all the time, right? In our Northeastern days, me, Kevin Cobb, and Glav would, and Chris Bosco too, who's actually at Navy
Okay.
now.
Yeah.
We used to have some of the most heated racquetball games that you would have ever have seen. And there's a billion
I
stories
love
that
it,
can be
man.
told. We tell on the recruiting trail pretty
I love
regularly
it.
when we're around each other.
Yeah.
But I do love racquetball. I haven't played since I've been at Penn State. And basketball too. Me and Cobb would go at it on the basketball court, and
There we go.
start
All right.
arguing. And yeah,
I
there's some
love it, man.
stories there. So there's some of those. I don't have many of them recently, but some of
Oh,
those
that's good, man. I like it. I like it.
that's it.
All right, all right. So you're a little bit of a racquetball guy. Okay, so you're driving somewhere. You're gonna go see a guy. What musicians are on your playlist when you're on that long drive?
Uh, all over the map.
Okay.
Morgan Wallen. Had Hootie and the Blowfish on yesterday on the
Oh,
ride back.
interesting. All right.
So really all over the map. I like rock, alt rock. I like country. It's
There
usually
we go.
somewhere in that range. So
I like it, man. I like it. All right, next one, last one on the kitchen sink here. If you could get a mulligan on one player you missed on in recruiting over your years, who would you use it for?
oh man,
It's probably nobody, right? You hit on everybody.
yeah. Um, I'm
Do you have any
flicking
big
through it
names
right
that you missed
now.
on? No?
What's
Yeah.
that?
Do you have any big names that you missed on that are now playing in the big leagues or something?
Not yet. Not
Okay.
yet. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is, but
That's
um,
great, man. All right. Well, that's good, man. It's good that you can't think of one off the top of your head. I mean, that's a pretty good career so far then. I'll save you on that one. That's
yeah,
great.
I was
That's a
gonna say
positive, right?
there's definitely a couple. I'm gonna get
Yeah.
somebody who's listening to. It's funny because like Kevin Cobb would be a guy. He's the one that keeps track of every one that I missed on. When we were together, so we kept score of each other. So
That's great, man. That's great. All right, last thing here, buddy. So it's obviously something we want to talk about a lot on this is just the MVP, the most valuable person in your life growing up within baseball. Not necessarily now, but just in your life. Who is your most valuable person?
Well, I think just from a family standpoint, like growing up, especially, my parents, just being able to, I had this crazy dream of doing what I'm doing right now, right?
Mm.
My grandfather as well, who's still alive. He's coming up and making the trip up here too today. But they were the ones who, I was making a position change. My grandfather was buying me the glove for it, right? If I when I was a volunteer assistant at Wheaton College, I was living at home still, right?
Mhm.
So if when I was 23 years old and I needed a car to be able to drive to go recruit, and I was using my grandfather's truck. So like, just, my mom, my dad, my grandfather, and were very involved in all those things. And I wouldn't have been able to do any of it and make $0 for 5 years without them being around to get to where I am now. So, and then
Oh,
now, like my wife is awesome, right? Like, she raises the kids, and she takes a lot of pride in that. And we wouldn't be able to do the things that we do now if it wasn't for her and some of the
yeah,
sacrifices that she made. So it's a lot of people that go into it, but it's
that's so
couldn't
cool,
have
man.
done it. Couldn't have done it without any of them.
I love it, man. I appreciate the personal insight on that. Super cool that you have all those important people in your life that can support you on your journey, dude. And I appreciate you, man. Appreciate you as a friend, and keep up the good work, buddy. Obviously, we will be talking soon, but appreciate you taking the time, man, when you have family coming into town.
Awesome. And thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you bet, buddy. We'll catch up with you soon, all right?
Sounds good.
All right, pal. All right. So for everybody watching, make sure to check out theparentdugout.com. That's theparentdugout.com. Super cool stuff on there. Get access to Dirt from the Dugout Live, BRC, which you're on right now. Ask Justin and Ravi anything. This is where you get direct access to ask us any questions you want. So that's a really important feature on the platform. Videos, written content, other things. We're really excited about what's going on with the Parent Dugout and everything that we have building there. So we're really thankful for all the people that are on there, all the members that we have, and all the new members that we're getting. We just thank you so much for your support and coming on. Come be a part of the Parent Dugout. Thanks a lot for listening.